I can assure you, like when COVID happened, different governments looked at the same numbers and came up with completely different ways of dealing with it. When people says the answer is in the data, I said, no, the answer is in who reads the data.
How you see businesses restoring soul to their organizations.
So I wrote this book. It came out in January of 2020. And if you recall, in March of 2020, we closed down. And the book sold really well the first 2 months, and they did not sell much for the next 3 months because you couldn't get it and Amazon wasn't going to ship it. And then it started selling again really well. And people asked, did I write the book knowing that COVID had happened? And I said, no, the book was done. And the last time I touched it was in September 2019. And the earliest there was even the first signs of COVID, if you were in China, was November. But every single thing that has happened in the last 2 years, including, by the way, most recently Web3, I basically say is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. Okay. And that is primarily because everybody fixated on the math. And I basically, as by the way, a person with an advanced degree in mathematics, decided that the real value was in the meaning, that the spreadsheet could be done by anybody. The data was extremely important, but it was like electricity. You needed to have it to see the way ahead, but which company and which individual separates themselves by the way they use electricity. And so the premise of the book was that we had become too data-driven, too spreadsheet-driven. Not that those are important. As I mentioned, I have a degree in finance and a math degree, so I probably get those things. But we had tilted so much that we've forgotten the soul of a company, which are its people and its culture and its story. And we had forgotten that in the end, it's not the scoreboard that matters, it's the ball and the player.
Why is that? And why did people not really realize that? Why did it take a pandemic for people to realize that?
There were two reasons that people didn't realize it. One is, if you recall, because, and again, data is extremely important, but because the highest valued companies tended to be data-driven, people basically said, hey, this data stuff is extremely important. We have to make sure we hire people who are good at it. We want to make sure we make decisions that are worthwhile. And so companies and individuals rightfully said we need to be more data-driven. But what they forgot was data-driven is one part of it, and that the future is really about data-driven storytelling, not just about data-driven data, right? And so the fixation was basically, hey, companies that fixate on data tends to do well. As you also mentioned in your opening, the entire industry, particularly the marketing industry, this is media, advertising, logistics, had all basically decided that what mattered a lot was the plumbing, that the efficiency of the plumbing, of finding the right person at the right time, shipping the right thing exactly when it was needed, keeping inventories low, right? And I reminded people of two things. Number one is that works unless there is a shock in the system. And anybody who says and has lived long enough knows we have shocks every 2-3 years. That's number one. But as importantly, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people missed, is fine. You can find the right person in the right place at the right time. But what are you going to say? Right? So the whole idea is, what's the poetry? The plumbing is fine. Everybody, and by the way, everybody will have the same plumbing. The big lie was that you could actually differentiate on the plumbing. You don't differentiate on the plumbing, you differentiate on the poetry, right? And so the only people who made a lot of money were the plumbers, and people had lots of plumbing, but they had no water coming out.
So how do you, as a business leader, how do you add water to the plumbing, or how you focus more on that?
First of all, number one, make sure you have a world-class data organization. You need that. So I'm not, unlike a lot of people, because of my background, I truly believe it's important, okay? But it's necessary but not sufficient to compete. You have that. But then you ask the following. I have data, so I'm no longer at a competitive disadvantage with other people. Now, that's relatively true as long as you're not competing with Amazon or Facebook or a few of these other people. Okay, so I'm not at a competitive disadvantage with my immediate competitors, if I'm a bank, if I'm whatever. But okay, if that's once that's done, how do I actually extract meaning from the math? So a chapter in my book literally says too much math, too little meaning, and then shows how you actually can extract meaning from the math without you knowing any statistics, math, or data logic. I simply say, here are 6 questions you ask, which I call the 6 I's, right? Which is to give me an insight. Don't give me a piece of data. If someone can, if the machine can spit out the number, then it's not a piece of insight. It's a piece of data. Tell me what a piece of insight is. An insight makes someone see, think, and feel differently about something. A row of numbers never does, right? Involve a lot of different people in looking at the number, because I can assure you, like when COVID happened, different governments looked at the same numbers and came up with completely different ways of dealing with it. China came up with one way, New Zealand and Australia came up with another way, the United States came up with a third way. So when people says the answer is in the data, I said, no, the answer is in who reads the data, right? So the I involvement is make sure you have different people with different backgrounds looking at the data. Otherwise, you'll actually end up with something pretty weird. So I have this 6I exercise, which people have found so useful. That's the reason the book sells like crazy. It's like, hey, let me explain to you how this gets done without you having to run algorithms.
Yeah, it's a blueprint for how to do it.
How to think about it, right?
What types of people do you need to find who think more creative people as opposed to?
Yeah, I would say it's this. What I did was I decided to study who are some of the best data scientists in the world. Interestingly, right? And the best data scientists were not necessarily just really good at understanding the importance of data. They actually had 3 skill sets. And it was these 3 skill sets that I suggest that people look for. Number one, they were deeply curious. So they would ask questions. They wouldn't just say, okay, here's the data. They would ask questions. The second is they tended to be fantastic at communication. They could actually take the stuff and, make it sing, right? So at the back of my library, I've got all of Edward Tuff's books, where he basically takes simple numbers and visualizes them and makes them sing. So they were very good communicators. And the third is they were very good collaborators. Because the reality of it is, unless the data is informed by the business and the business informs the data, it doesn't work. If you can't tell a story with it, it doesn't work. And if you don't interrogate it and look at it from different ways, which is curiosity, it doesn't work. So I basically say collaboration, communication skills, and curiosity.
Please like and subscribe so the YouTube algorithm will show our videos to more people. Also join our Substack newsletter for exclusive updates, or if you're on the go, find us wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. Click on one of the links to find our next video, and also check out the links below for more information. Thanks so much for watching.